Boom. Saliva hit his cheek, warm and disgusting, trickling down to his immaculately pressed uniform. Guardsman William Stone stood still, eyes fixed on a distant point, as if nothing had happened. But it had. In front of him, smiling smugly, stood a man in an expensive suit, with a gold watch on his wrist and dark glasses that hid his eyes. He leaned closer, barely holding back his laughter. "Come on, soldier, do something," he said mockingly, waving his champagne glass. The crowd outside Buckingham Palace froze. Someone whispered, "Oh, no." Tourists picked up their phones, waiting for a reaction. But William did not move. He didn't blink. He didn't give them a show. But something changed in the air. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. But no one, not even this arrogant rich man, was prepared for what happened the next moment. The guardsman's dilemma, the golden gates of Buckingham Palace gleamed under the summer sun. Tourists swarmed like bees around the guards, whispering, pointing, and snapping pictures. But now, the air was thick with tension. William's jaw tightened beneath his stoic expression. He had endured a lot in his years of service. Ridiculous tourists, unbearable weather, even the occasional attempt to make him laugh. But never this. The insult clung to him, a vile mark against his dignity. His training dictated that he remain still, that he rise above provocation. Do not react. Do not retaliate. But this was different. The champagne-wielding man smirked, as if testing the boundaries of the unwritten rules. He turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "observe the so-called elite forces of Britain, reduced to mannequins in funny hats." Laughter rippled through a small group of tourists. A woman gasped in horror. A child tugged on his mother's sleeve, wide-eyed. The moment stretched unbearably long. Then, movement. Not from William, but from the formation behind him. A second guardsman, positioned a few feet away, shifted ever so slightly. The change was imperceptible to most, but William noticed, and so did the rich man. "Oh," he grinned, stepping even closer. "Did I break one of your little toy soldiers?" A low murmur spread through the crowd. Something was about to happen. The breaking point. William's mind raced. He could feel the weight of his bearskin hat, the stiffness of his red tunic, the ceremonial rifle gripped firmly in his gloved hands. The Queen's Guard was bound by strict regulations. Protocol demanded unwavering discipline. But there was another rule, a lesser-known one. A guardsman may react if physically provoked. And spit? That was assault. The rich man had crossed a line. William exhaled slowly. His fingers curled slightly around the rifle. He could hear the whispers growing, the anticipation crackling in the air. Then, with a measured movement, he shifted his foot ever so slightly, a motion so small, yet so deliberate, that the entire crowd inhaled as one. The rich man's smirk faltered. The crowd fell dead silent. William took a single step forward. The man took a step back. Another step. The man's arrogance drained from his face. His eyes darted to the other guards, to the crowd, to his expensive shoes. His drunken bravado wavered, replaced by something that resembled uncertainty, perhaps even fear. Then, in a voice crisp as breaking ice, William spoke. "Stand down." It was not a request. The rich man swallowed hard. He looked around, suddenly acutely aware of the growing disapproval from the onlookers. The laughter had stopped. The energy had shifted. He was no longer in control of the moment. And then, thud. A second guardsman, unnoticed until now, had marched forward, positioning himself at William's side. The synchronized movement sent a message louder than any words could. "Disrespect one of us, and you disrespect us all." The man hesitated. He opened his mouth as if to argue, but thought better of it. Instead, he took an awkward step backward, adjusting his suit as though trying to brush off the weight of his disgrace. And then, without another word, he turned and disappeared into the crowd. A slow ripple of applause started, cautious at first, then growing. Someone muttered, "Serves him right?" A child waved excitedly at William, and for the first time that day, the guard permitted himself the smallest of victories, a moment not in breaking protocol, but in upholding it with honor. The Queen's Guard did not flinch, but they did not forget. The sun hung high over Buckingham Palace, its golden rays bouncing off the polished gates and the rows of gleaming red tunics standing guard. The crowd had begun to thin, some tourists still murmuring about the confrontation they had just witnessed. But for Guardsman William Stone, the moment was far from over. As the bald man in the navy blue suit disappeared into the crowd, something gnawed at William's instincts. The way the man had taunted him, the brazen arrogance. It wasn't just drunken bravado. It felt calculated, deliberate. And the way he had retreated, eyes darting around like a man who had just realized his mistake. Something was off. But William was bound by duty. He could not turn his head, could not follow the man, could not chase after him even if every fiber of his being screamed that something wasn't right. He remained still, gripping his rifle, watching only through the sliver of peripheral vision afforded to him beneath his towering bearskin hat. And that's when he saw it. A flicker of movement, just beyond the gilded gates. A shadow where there should have been none. A whisper of suspicion. William's training kicked in. His heart rate did not spike. His breath remained steady, but his mind sharpened to a razor's edge. The man in the suit had left, but his presence still lingered like an echo. The moment he stepped away, another figure had appeared in the distance, slipping into the mass of tourists. A man in a dark hoodie, shoulders hunched, walking with purpose, but not too much purpose. The kind of walk that tried to blend in. William had seen that kind of walk before. He couldn't turn his head to follow the man, but he didn't need to. The guards were never alone. Click. A nearly imperceptible radio click came through the small earpiece hidden under his hat. Someone else had noticed too. Suspicious individual, Eastern Quadrant. Black hoodie, medium build, possible tail on suit man. It was Corporal James Beckett, William's closest friend in the regiment. If Beckett had noticed it, it wasn't paranoia. It was real. Holding position, William responded, voice low and controlled. The royal guards were more than just ceremonial figures standing outside Buckingham Palace. They were also an integral part of the security apparatus protecting one of the most high-profile locations in the world. Their stillness was not just for show. It was a way to observe without being noticed. And now, William was watching, waiting, hunting. The shift in the air minutes passed. The tourists moved as they always did, oblivious to the silent game unfolding before them. But William's mind was racing, analyzing every detail. The man in the hoodie had slowed down. He had stopped near a group of tourists, pretending to check his phone. But something was off. He wasn't looking at his screen. His gaze flickered toward the gates, toward the guards, toward William. Another click in his earpiece. He's casing the perimeter. Beckett, keep eyes on him. Stone, maintain position. The voice belonged to Lieutenant Harris, overseeing operations from the security center. Confirmed, William muttered. Then, something happened that made his blood run cold. The man in the hoodie reached into his pocket. Not fast, not aggressive, but deliberate. William tensed. His fingers gripped his rifle just a little tighter. The man's hand emerged, and in it a phone. He raised it to eye level, as if taking a picture. Of the guards. Of William. His gut twisted. This wasn't a casual tourist snapping a memory of the famed Queen's Guard. This was something else. A silent decision. There were protocols for situations like this. Observe. Report. Do not act unless ordered. But William had a decision to make. He could let it go. Assume it was nothing. Let security handle it. Or, he could push just a little. Not enough to break protocol, but enough to send a message. He exhaled slowly. Then, ever so slightly, he adjusted his grip on the rifle. It was a movement so small that most people wouldn't notice, but the right person would. The man in the hoodie froze. His phone hovered mid-air for a fraction of a second too long. Then, in an instant, he turned and disappeared into the crowd. Gone. Another radio click. He's moving. Eastern Quadrant, heading toward the main exit. Beckett, stay with him. William allowed himself the smallest of victories. Whoever that man was, whatever he was planning, he now knew one thing for certain. The guards were watching, And they did not forget. The second encounter, the rest of William's shift passed without incident. But the moment stayed with him. Even as the sun dipped lower, even as the final tourists trickled away, even as the changing of the guard ceremony took place, he couldn't shake the feeling. Something bigger was at play. It was only later, after he had been dismissed for the night, that his suspicions were confirmed. Because when he stepped outside the barracks, still in uniform but without his bearskin hat, there was someone waiting for him. The same bald man in the navy blue suit, standing by a black luxury car, smoking a cigarette, watching him with a knowing smirk. Waiting. A dangerous offer. William clenched his fists, keeping his face neutral. The man exhaled a stream of smoke, then flicked his cigarette away carelessly. "Good evening, soldier," he said smoothly. William didn't respond. The man chuckled. "Ah, still playing the silent type? Very impressive." He took a step closer. "Look, let's skip the formalities. You and I both know something bigger is happening here." William's muscles tensed. "I represent certain interests," the man continued. "And I must say, I admire your discipline, your presence. The way you handled yourself today, truly exceptional." William remained motionless. "Tell me, guardsman," the man said, tilting his head, "have you ever considered working for people who truly appreciate those qualities?" Silence. The man smiled. "I could make you very wealthy, very powerful." He pulled a sleek black card from his pocket and held it out. William stared at it. No logo, no name, just a number. The man's expression grew serious. "Think about it. Your country sees you as a statue, but with the right connections, you could be something more." A long pause. Then, William finally spoke. "I serve the crown." A flicker of disappointment crossed the man's face. Then, he chuckled. "Well," he said, pocketing the card, "loyalty is a rare thing. That alone makes you valuable." He turned and opened the door to his black luxury car. But before stepping inside, he glanced back. "We'll talk again," he said. Then, the car pulled away, leaving William standing in the dim evening light, his heart pounding. The black luxury car disappeared into the night, leaving only the lingering scent of expensive cologne and burning cigarette smoke. William Stone remained rooted to the pavement outside the barracks, his mind racing with the weight of what had just transpired. The man in the navy blue suit. Who was he really? And what did he mean by certain interests? William had spent years in the Queen's Guard. He had stood in absolute silence, endured the sweltering summer heat, the biting cold of winter, the taunts of tourists, and the absurd challenges thrown his way. But never, never, had anyone approached him like this. A bribe. It was subtle, wrapped in smooth words and flattery, but that's what it was. A bribe cloaked in intrigue, whispered in the dark like an echo of treason. His instinct screamed at him. This was no ordinary rich man. And then, another thought struck him. If he's willing to approach me, how many others has he already spoken to? The weight of silence. William turned on his heel and marched back inside, his boots clicking sharply against the pavement. The barracks were dimly lit, the low hum of voices from his fellow guardsmen filling the common area. Some were off duty, laughing, playing cards. Others were cleaning their boots, ironing their uniforms, preparing for another day of unwavering discipline. But William wasn't in the mood for routine. He strode past them, heading for the office of Lieutenant Harris. He knocked twice. "Enter," came the clipped reply. Harris was seated behind a sturdy oak desk, flipping through reports. A seasoned officer with a no-nonsense demeanor, he was respected and feared in equal measure. His sharp eyes flicked up as William stepped inside. "Stone," he said, setting his pen down. "What is it?" William hesitated for only a fraction of a second before speaking. "Sir, I was approached outside just now by the man in the navy blue suit, the same one who caused a disturbance earlier today." Harris's expression darkened. "What did he say?" "He tried to recruit me," William said, his jaw tightening. "Offered me power, wealth, said I could be something more." For the first time, Harris's hardened military posture relaxed, just slightly. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling through his nose as if weighing something heavy in his mind. Then, instead of surprise, a knowing look crossed his face. "You did the right thing coming to me, Stone," Harris said. "But you need to listen carefully to what I'm about to say." William straightened. "Sir?" Harris clasped his hands together, his voice lowering. "You're not the first guard he's approached." The hidden a chill ran down William's spine. "How many?" he asked, keeping his tone steady. Harris exhaled. "More than a few. Over the past year, there have been whispers, quiet approaches to guards, soldiers, even a few officers. He's not some rogue businessman looking for private security. He's connected." "To what?" William asked. Harris's jaw tightened. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stood, walking over to a filing cabinet. He unlocked it with a small key and pulled out a thin, classified dossier. He placed it on the desk, motioning for William to come closer. When he flipped it open, William's breath caught. Photographs, surveillance images, reports, and there, in multiple locations across London, was the same bald man in the navy blue suit, talking to different people, different soldiers. Some of them were in uniform, some were not. "We've been watching him," Harris admitted. "We don't know exactly who he works for, but we do know this. He's been trying to turn people." "Turn them?" William echoed, his stomach nodding. Harris met his gaze. "Into informants, into assets, and in some cases, into traitors." The word hung heavy in the air. William felt a surge of anger rise in his chest. The Queen's Guard had centuries of honor behind them. They were more than just ceremonial figures. They were protectors of one of the most sacred institutions in Britain. The idea that anyone among them could be turned made his blood boil. "Has anyone accepted?" William forced himself to ask. Harris hesitated. Then, with an almost imperceptible nod, he confirmed William's worst fear. "Yes." Loyalties in question. William's fingers curled into fists. "Who?" he asked. "I can't tell you that," Harris replied. "Not yet." William wanted to press him, but he knew better. If Harris was withholding names, there was a reason. But that meant someone among them, one of their own, had been compromised. And if that was true, then today's events weren't just random harassment. The spit in his face, the taunts, the champagne. It wasn't just some drunk testing the patience of the Royal Guard. It was a test, a way to see how he would react, a way to decide if he was worth recruiting. The realization made his skin crawl. Harris saw the shift in his expression and nodded. "Now you understand." William swallowed hard. "What do we do?" Harris closed the dossier. "For now, we do what we always do, our duty. But keep your eyes open, Stone. If he approached you, he might approach others. If you notice anything at all, you come straight to me." William nodded. Harris studied him for a moment, then said, "And Stone, yes, sir? Good job today." The words were simple, but coming from Harris, they meant more than a medal. A personal warning. That night, William lay in his bunk, staring at the ceiling. His mind replayed every moment of the day. The spit, the tension, the warning from Harris. Somewhere among them, there was a traitor, and that meant he couldn't trust everyone. He turned onto his side, exhaling slowly. He was trained to endure storms, to stand still while the world moved around him. But for the first time since joining the Guard, he felt like the enemy wasn't outside the gates. It was already inside, and it was watching him, waiting. The return the following evening, as William finished his shift, he stepped outside the barracks and froze. The black luxury car was back, parked across the street, engine running, tinted windows, watching, waiting. William locked eyes with the reflection in the windshield. His pulse remained steady, but his instincts flared. He squared his shoulders, exuding the same unwavering discipline that defined his role. And then, the back window rolled down. A flash of a navy blue suit, a glint of a gold watch, and then, the same smooth voice. "I knew we'd meet again, soldier." The black luxury car idled across the street, its tinted windows reflecting the dim glow of the street lamps. William Stone stood still, his body rigid, heart steady, but his mind racing. The window rolled down with an eerie slowness, revealing the same bald man in the navy blue suit. He was smiling. "I knew we'd meet again, soldier," he said, his voice smooth and confident. William didn't move. The man took a slow drag from his cigarette before flicking it onto the pavement. The embers sizzled for a moment before dying in the damp air. "You're different," the man continued. "Not like the others." The others. That single phrase made William's gut tighten. "How many have you turned?" he asked, his voice low but firm. The man smirked, leaning back into his seat. "Enough." There it was. The confirmation. William clenched his jaw, feeling the weight of the conversation pressing down on him. "Tell me something, soldier," the man mused. "What do you think your loyalty buys you? A lifetime of standing still while the world moves on without you? Do you think they care about you?" William didn't answer. The man chuckled. "I can offer you something real. A future. A purpose beyond playing the Queen's statue." He reached into his suit pocket and pulled out the same black card he had offered before. "Last chance," he said, holding it out. "Walk away from this old life. Walk towards something greater." William stared at the card. A simple piece of paper, yet heavy with meaning. And then, ever so slightly, he took a step forward. The betrayal, the man's smirk widened. "Good," he said. "Very good." William reached out, but not for the card. In a single, fluid motion, he grabbed the man's wrist and yanked him forward, slamming his free hand onto the doorframe to prevent the man from escaping. A flash of shock crossed the man's face before William's next words cut through the air like a blade. "You're under arrest." The air in the street shifted. The atmosphere cracked with tension. Before the man could react, a squad of armed security officers emerged from the shadows, weapons drawn, their boots pounding against the pavement. They had been waiting, watching. Just as William had suspected, this wasn't just about him. It was bigger. The man snarled, jerking back, but William's grip was ironclad. "Bad move, soldier," the man hissed, his voice now venomous. William's face remained stone cold. "Not a soldier," he corrected. "A guardsman." The car door was flung open as two security officers ripped the man from his seat, pinning him against the vehicle. He struggled, but it was pointless. A third officer opened the back of the car. Inside, a briefcase full of documents, photographs, and cash sat waiting. Evidence of every bribe, every betrayal, every soldier who had sold their loyalty. One of the officers let out a low whistle. "Looks like we got him." The bald man growled. "You think this ends with me?" He laughed bitterly. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." William leaned in slightly. "Neither do you." And then, for the first time, the man's confidence cracked. The final revelation back at the security headquarters, William stood in a briefing room with Lieutenant Harris, staring down at the open file on the table. The captured man had a name, Richard Harlow, former intelligence, now a known operative for a deep, underground network of corporate and political interests looking to manipulate and recruit military personnel for covert international operations. A traitor factory. "This wasn't just about the Royal Guard," Harris said grimly. "They were testing the waters, looking to buy influence. Today, they spit in your face. Tomorrow, they might be standing inside these walls." William's hands tightened into fists. "How many took the money?" he asked. Harris exhaled slowly. "More than we thought." William's stomach turned. He had spent years trusting the men beside him, standing shoulder to shoulder in the name of tradition and duty. The idea that some had sold themselves out made his blood boil. But Harris wasn't done. He turned the file to another page, revealing a list of names. And there, among them, Corporal James Beckett. William's breath caught. The unthinkable choice, his best friend, his closest ally in the regiment, the one who had first spotted the suspicious man in the hoodie. It had all been an act. Beckett had been feeding information, playing both sides, watching William to see if he would break. And now, William was faced with a decision he never thought he would have to make. Harris handed him a separate folder. "We need you to bring him in," he said quietly. William stared at the folder, his heartbeat steady, but his soul screaming. His duty was clear. His loyalty was unshaken. But could he do it? Could he arrest the man he once trusted with his life? The answer came in a slow, painful nod. Yes, sir. And with that, William turned on his heel and marched toward the final confrontation.